Hi everyone, welcome to another episode again on how to make shoe. In this very video, we'll be looking into what we call the standard form, just as we've been looking on the previous class. I remain your aspiring footwear professor. Let us design the standard form for our casual shoe. We are done with the main form. It's time to start the standard form. Let us design the standard form. First, we place our paper on a paper, leaving a space on the bottom part. The essence of the space is to give the feather edge allowance as the lasting allowance that we need. So we now trace out the main form on the paper. Now that we've traced, let's see the two main ball gauge points, the front and the back, the bottom rather. Now let us create a straight tangent line from the front part of the last, touching the ball gauge point. From that point down, we look for the highest point of the toe part of the last, the highest point of it. Let us zoom so that we can be able to see it very clear. This is the highest point of the last to the gauge point. We need a straight line. That's a tangent that is touching it. You can remember from our previous class, getting a tangent is just a straight line passing through a highest point, as we did on our bottom part of the last when getting our gauge point. So you get that straight line tangent that is touching the highest point of the last, just a straight line. Then do the same with that of the instep. This is our tangent from the gauge point down to the toe pad. Then connect your gauge point from the top to the bottom as well. We'll have a line from that part as well. I want you to know that all these lines that we are drawing are all construction lines. Technical drawing students will understand this better. They are not the main lines for our patterns, but they are guides, and they are leading us into the promised land that we're heading to. Now let's connect this line also to be a straight line as well, from the gauge point towards the instep upward. Well, the reason why we're having this straight line is to be able to have a line that will help us during the springing, so that we'll not have contours as we spring to get our patterns. You understand springing later. You understand more about springing when we come to that. Divide our gauge point into two. So first of all, let's take a measurement. I've measured mine here, is giving us 80 millimeter from the top to the bottom. So we divide 80 millimeter by 2. When we say 80 millimeter, that is 8 centimeter. Okay, just know that it's more of conversion from centimeter to millimeter. That's what we'll be doing more. I'll use more of millimeter in this pattern cutting. So 80 divided by 2, we have 40. We've divided our line into 2. Remember, we have our back height that is labeled already, and the back height is 66 millimeter. That is 6.6 centimeter, which we've measured. Remember, from our last measurement, we measured that. It gave us 6.6 millimeter. So we connect the line together from the back height to the center part of the ball gauge line. That's the line we divided earlier. You can see we're gradually constructing our casual shoe. So now this is what we call our top line, from that back to the front. And at the top part there, the InStep line, which we talked about. The InStep line is to get the tongue of the casual shoe. We measure 20 millimeter downward. Mind you, in casual shoe, the size of the tongue determines what you want to get. It can be any size, okay? But because of this, I am using 20 millimeter. It's not necessary that it must be 20 millimeter. It can be 30 millimeter downward. It depends on the size of the tongue you are making. So from that InStep line, now let's have a 90 degree. The reason why I'm using these two rulers is to get a perfect 90 degree from that angle. So we use the two rulers or a straight line at the edge so that we get a 90 degree from that point. Is for the purpose of our tongue. So we've done that. Now we'll measure 33 millimeter or 35 millimeter. The reason is to get the length of the tongue side. That's the side part of the tongue. Okay, so let's measure that and get our 35 millimeter. I'll be using 35 millimeter in this case. So but before we do that, let's get another 3 millimeter upward from this point. 3 millimeter, that's from the top line point, and we'll connect it to the top line. We'll bring it up 3 millimeter. 3, good. So 3 millimeter upward, and we'll draw the line to connect with the top line. This line is just to create a room for our casual shoe not to go down much but to go upward, so that the top line will be balanced, not to go down. Some casual shoe will end up creating some loops down and it will not be straight enough on the person's feet, so you have to bring it up a little bit. This is one of the major difference that we have when making a casual shoe. That's the difference between a casual shoe and either Oxford or Derby, this 3 millimeter line. Now let's measure 1/4 inch from the budget point on the top line, away from the budget point, rather on the top line, away from the budget point. When we say 1/4, it means let's divide an inch into 4. Okay, dividing an inch into 4, we'll have a quarter. So 1.25 inches is the measurement. 1 inch and a quarter. So this is my 1/4 inch, and let's mark it. We are creating the casual shoe gradually. Just follow this video and watch more and more so that you understand this simple principle. By doing this, you are trying to do once and for all, not to have excess mistake as a result when doing your patterns. Now from the marked 35 millimeter, let's mark it and show the position. You can see 35 millimeter. Let's mark. Oh, good. Now connect it from where your 1/4 inch is. You discover that we are creating a shape of a casual shoe, a simple loafers for the feet. That is just it. You can see the shape is coming out. The next point now is to go to the back part of the shoe. In the back part here, we are creating an allowance for what we call the stiffener allowance. When I say stiffener, is the stiff material that we'll put at the back of our shoe to make it stand strong and rigid. So we have what we call a -3 at the top and +3 at the bottom. This is what it means. We reduce 3 millimeter inwardly. 3 millimeter, the point you see me mark, that is a 3 millimeter. Then at the bottom part you add 3 millimeter. That is a position for your stiffener. When you put in your stiffener, that allowance is added. When making your patterns, you consider the materials you are using, and there will always be an increase or decrease as a result of it. That is the essence of doing that. Now we connect those lines together. I will advise, if you are not good at freehand sketch, get a French curve. A French curve will go a long way helping you connect curves together. This curve is what you create from the 3mm upward, a line down to meet the 2mm and 3mm downward. Make sure it's a very good curve for the purpose of your shoe. Okay, so 3mm minus 3mm and plus 3mm for our stiffener allowance. Next is our lasting allowance. The lasting allowance is the general allowance we give to our last, where we pull our upper to the bottom part of the last, so that's away from the feather edge. Okay, using our divider, or you use your compass or any. I'm not actually good at using any of these two, as 20mm is a measurement I can just take off hard and zoom, I get it perfect. But because of the class, let us take the measurement. I will be using a divider to do that. 20mm from the divider, that is what I just did now. Then I'll draw a line. It's just a print on it. If you are using your compass, it's more easier because you'll be having a pencil that will be tracing it as you draw. So what I'm doing is just creating the prints of the line, after which I will now follow suit by making sure it's now visible. Okay, 20mm, make sure it's 20mm. If it's less than 20mm, your lasting allowance might not be enough. And mind you, again, as you are doing your patterns, you are putting into consideration the technology you'll be using as you make your patterns. For other technology, it might not be 20mm, but for the sake of this, we'll be using the cemented method, which is 20mm. If it's beyond 20mm, just know that you have to trim, so that you don't waste your material. You have to trim excess material, be too much. So 20mm is a perfect. Now let's create the curves for our casual shoe. I'm creating the curve for the tongue now, as you can see, and as well from the top line. I'm using the line on the 3mm. This is how far we go in creating our standard form. Now the next one is to get the lining. The lining is 40mm rather by 60mm. That's for the lining. I'm going to be using a counter kind of a lining, that for the front part and the back part. Using the counter, this is a counter of the lining. Connect them together from the 40 to by 60mm is for our lining. Mind you, the standard form carry all the patterns that you need. It carries both the working patterns, the lining pattern, and the net pattern. This is the total patterns of our simple casual shoe. Follow this principle, you will enjoy your pattern making process as simple as it is. The next thing now is to perforate where there are curves that we'll be using to get our pattern. So let's perforate by creating a small cut. Let's cut it out a little bit on the line precisely. So as you can see, after cutting from the line, you might end up having some confusion. Just make sure you spoil with a notch the wrong part where you will not be tracing, so that you will not be confused. Okay, where you will not be using, you cut it out. Just create some perfection. The essence is to have lines that you'll be able to connect them easily. So from my top line, that 3mm line precisely, create a cut. I'm using the straight line there as well. Do the same with this other part and cut it out. We trace it also, as you can see. Now for the tongue as well, let's create a straight line. Since it's going to be a straight line, that will be connecting them and a little bit. Know that is a straight line. You'll be using all the curved lines, okay, when doing your patterns. Then from the back part, we'll cut, leaving a straight line at the back part as well. That's the top line that will extend. If you notice, you discover that the top line was extended outward. It will be a guide for me when taking out the other patterns. Very, very important. So now, if as I'm cutting now, I'm not cutting off to the top, but I'm cutting and withdraw ahead. You can see, cut it straight as it is. It's just a guide to help not to go outside the top line when taking the sectional patterns of our shoe. So let's cut straight line from the instep to the vamp, and from the vamp outward as well. So this is how far we can go on designing our standard form. As it is called, the standard form is a pattern that carries all the patterns that you need for your shoe. Very, very key pattern for your shoe. So let us finish cutting them, and as we prepare to remove the sectional pattern in our next video. If you have any question, make sure you drop your question on the comment section. And as well, those of you that are in the paid class, you can follow suit to the group and let us discuss more on the group. In every pattern, it is very, very important to have a file for each pattern that you're making. So let's label our pattern by inserting the last code, the size, and the date of the pattern for the sake of reference, and the type of last you use, so that when you come next, you will not find it difficult to draft out your pattern or to get your patterns. And if you have not subscribed to this channel, make sure you subscribe to this channel and click on the notification button as we keep you updated on how to make shoes. I remain your aspiring footwear professor, Peter Shalom Gebe.